Welcome back. Well, Diane Harkey is here today, and I'd like to welcome you. She is, or has been, a assembly person for about 6 years, and in fact, you still are for another couple weeks?
Yes, I am, until swearing in December.
All right, and she is actually ours for where we live up in Rancho, and I want to welcome you here today, but that is coming to an end after 6 years. And you are running for the Board of Equalization. And as I said when I was announcing you, most people are like, what the heck is the Board of Equalization? You see it on the ballot and you go, okay, governor, lieutenant governor, and you go, people look at that and they go, all right, let's forget about it. Let's keep going. Because people really don't know what it is. So it's great to have you here. And I want to find out first, what is the Board of Equalization? Why is it important?
The Board of Equalization is kind of the taxpayer's last resort for taxation right now in the state of California. It was originally formed back in the 1870s by constitutional amendment to help equalize property tax collections and receipts throughout the state, because many assessors were, the state actually at that time was run almost totally by property tax. And so assessors in certain areas, just to get reelected, would lower property tax rates. And so some counties were paying more for services than the others. And so the Board of Equalization was equalizing that.
Okay.
Since then, the position has grown as the state has gone on to sales tax and other forms of taxes and fees. Now the Board of Equalization implements, audits, collects, assesses, and actually helps to define parameters for about 36 taxes and fees in the state of California. So it's very important to have somebody that's kind of on your side when all this is going on.
So how does it differ from the Franchise Tax Board that everyone knows when you pay your taxes every year?
Well, the Franchise Tax Board is strictly income tax.
Okay.
And with the Board of Equalization, though, if you have a problem with the Franchise Tax Board, the Board of Equalization actually hears Franchise Tax Board appeals and can rule and adjudicate on them, such that, you know, it's a hugely important office to taxpayers, for businesses, for anyone that's got a dispute, or you know, are fees being retroactively assessed to you? Are your property taxes accurate? Is your assessor working properly? You know, are you the fees, some of the fees from some of our regulatory agencies, do they make sense? Is the implementation making sense? The board can have input administratively to much of what is done in the legislature with regards to taxes and fees. They can't change what they decide to pass, but they can make the implementation and maybe make some sense out of it, such that it's less punitive and it's not retroactive, and other things. So it's really important.
That makes sense. I remember growing up, a friend of mine, his dad worked for the Board of Equalization in San Mateo County, and I remember him talking about it a little bit. And of course, I was like 10 years old, so I wouldn't have understood it much anyway. But that's always stuck in my mind, you know, hearing about it, but not really knowing what it is. You're termed out as assembly person, am I right?
As the assembly, I could have run for Senate, because that seat was kind of you know, in my turf. But I really thought that I would much rather help in decision making with 5 people rather than 120. I think I'll have more impact on the tax and fee and the business community, and helping to keep and retain jobs in Southern California and California as a state. And that's why I really wanted to do this. I think that I'll be very impactful there. I'll be able to form some good coalitions with 2 other members or whatever. Very
good. Speaking of good, good bills and bad bills, talk about a couple of those. Some of the bills that are either on the floor or about to be voted on or talked about that you like that are going on, and then give us a couple that maybe you think are detrimental to the future of California.
Well, everything's kind of off now. It's been either approved or rejected by the governor. We got out of session, I believe it was August 29th. So it was 3 in the morning, we left, and that was the end of the bill process. But the governor now has either decided to approve or reject. Some of the bills that I think we really do need are like what's on the ballot for the voters, the water bond. I think that's a very important bill. I would have liked to have seen it have more money for storage, because in Southern California that's really, really important. But there are some good things in there, and it was whittled down from 11 billion down to 7.5. So we do have 2.7 billion in storage, which can be multiplied by a variety of other funds. So I think it will be off, at least we're off to a good start. We haven't built water infrastructure since Jerry Brown's dad in the 60s.
So you like that bill, even though, you know, for some California tax papers, they go, oh no, here comes another bond measure that we're going to have to pay on for the next decade.
Yeah, bonds. If you're bonds are long-term financing for long-term projects, and if you're getting your money's worth and you're actually getting long-term infrastructure, it's good to pay it, just like you would a mortgage. However, when you've got something like high-speed rail, it's just being whittled and whittled and whittled away, and there's no real utilitarian value for it. That's where I think voters get burned. Okay,
so that's when you. That's one you obviously like. Are there a couple others you like, or one in particular you don't that may or may not have passed?
Well, I would like to say overall, my experience in the legislature, my biggest disappointment and my biggest pleasure really has been doing a lot of getting a little stability back to the state, even though the local governments are still, we were tanking. We had a really serious problem. But I do see that I believe the legislature abdicates their responsibility oftentimes to taxes and fees and whatnot when they put things on the ballot and let the voters decide. I mean, the voters elect them to represent them, and they expect them to make the decisions. And like right now, we've got how many ballot initiatives that are put on by special interests, put on by maybe the governor needing to do for debt. But if they're absolutely mandatory, they're good. The initiative process is good, but I think it's being abused. So I mean, let the voters decide. They abdicate responsibility, the legislature, a lot of times to the agencies. Like they'll let Air Resources Board have carte blanche to assess fees, such as with our new gas tax that's going to be coming down the pike. It's Air Resources Board. It's a carbon tax. And the legislature is not going to have any look back or say over that, and that's wrong. Legislature is elected by the people to represent them. And they need to have a say in this. They need to look back. The same with financing high-speed rail with cap and trade revenues, 25%. I mean, that's continuously appropriated, which means that the legislature will never oversee that. See, that's wrong. Those things are wrong. But I do think that what I'm really happy to see is that those people that have been elected to the state legislature are getting a little longer time in one or both houses, because you need, first place, you need to find out what's going on. Then there's every sort of business decision for a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation, as it were, the state of California. And then, of course, you've got people that are working for their own, what they really wanted to do when they got elected. And so this all takes time, and it takes time to build trust and relationships. And I've really managed to do that over my 6 years. I could probably be really effective in the next 8, but I think I'll be really effective at the Board of Equalization because of my 6 years in the legislature. I built a lot of strong relationships. Believe it or not, being a Republican, hardcore, staunch, no tax person, I built a lot of really strong relationships there.
Being that you've been back and forth meeting as an assembly person, you go up to Sacramento and come back down to your district. Have you found that over the past couple years that working with across the aisle with the Democrats and/or Jerry Brown, recently I think Governor Brown has even vetoed a couple bills his own party wanted, and they weren't too happy about it. I forget, one was just like a couple weeks ago where he said, small businesses don't need this. I forget what it was, but I also read that a lot of his own party were not happy about that. But have you found him to be pretty balanced, or what's your take overall?
I would say he's balanced. He's still very liberal, but compared to no governor, which is what we had before, this is good. I think the one thing that we need in the executive branch, be it on the national level or the state level, you need the executive officer to run the state. And you need a program. He needs to set a program. and he or she. And quite honestly, when you don't have a strong executive, you have 120 legislators in the state all running amok, throwing things on the wall, and then if you don't have anyone saying this is where we need to go and this is helpful to our agenda, you have a lot of chaos.
Interesting.
I think it's calmed down a little bit. I'm waiting for the next 4 years to see if Governor Brown helps Southern California. I will encourage that tremendously because we're a whole different world down here. We have different needs, different transportation needs. So, but I do think that you know, we're on a better footing than we were when I started in 2008.
Let's talk about quickly, a couple minutes that are left, your future, assuming that you are elected to the Board of Equalization. Would, and I know this is looking way ahead, would the next step for you maybe look at being a state controller? And is that sort of like the path that you'd like to see yourself on? Or you're just like, okay, let's just take this step and go from there?
I would love to spend 8 years doing this, because it's 2 4-year terms, and actually make a big impact, either through something I've done or just working behind the scenes to get things done. Working on relationships such that Southern California is more equally represented. I keep going back to that point, but it's really true. Geography separates us, as well as, you know, distance, climate, everything, and so we need more representation. Our whole constitutional officer cadre right now is from the San Francisco and the Peninsula area, and so between San Francisco, Berkeley, and Sacramento, we're kind of overrun, and we need more representation. So
being on if you get on the Board of Equalization, you'll be able to go ahead and see that through, even though this is, again, not what some would call a glamorous type state position compared to being assembly person, you know, where people really know it, but it has much more of an impact than most people would realize.
It's nuts and bolts, it's very technical, it's tax policy, it's weedy, it's analytical, it's all the things I like. I spent 30 years in banking and corporate finance, and I love to get into the weeds, and I love policy. So it will give me the opportunity to actually get some things done. A lot of my employees that will be exempt employees will be CPAs and tax attorneys. And so it's going to give us an opportunity to really get things done for the people of California, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right, you can find out more about Diane. There is her website, pretty easy. If you remember her name, Diane Harkey, there you go, dianeharkey.com. And on here, what's nice about her website, there's an explanation of the Board of Equalization. She's running for District 4, which is a rather wide, large district, although half of it's
Southern California.
Yeah, half of it's probably not very well populated, but the other half is really quite dense. But it's good to have you on.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for explaining the Board of Equalization to us.
Sure.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All right, we'll be right back.